Hello and welcome to latest edition of View from the Bridge. My name is Joel Lammy. Delighted today to be joined by former Leicestershire seamer and now coach Scott Boswell. Scott, how are things?
Yeah, really good. Looking forward to having some conversations.
Brilliant. Well, we've got loads we want to get into. You've had a fascinating journey. Your playing career and your coaching. So, tell us a bit about your current role. I know you were with the Blaze, but now you're with Lancashire Women as their lead fast bowling coach.
Yeah, so it's been a massive change. I've been sort of teaching at various schools for the last sort of 25 years. And sort of during that teaching career, I've also been involved in various coaching jobs. My recent one's been working with Blaze, from sort of the EPP all the way up to the pros. And I've been doing that sort of 4 or 5 years. I was involved with the Trent Rockets women's side for a couple of years, and yeah, it was an opportunity that I saw during the winter, and felt, you know, it was a different challenge from teaching, and something that I've always wanted to do and see how far I can push my coaching. And I saw the opportunity, and saw that Chris Reed was involved as head coach, and last year they'd had a lot of success. So I thought, yeah, let's why not? Let's give it a go. And so I started sort of on and off after the new year. I was working at the odd Friday just to get to know the team, observe, etc. And then I started in Easter, and I've been in the job for a month, which has been exciting. Been a real change from teaching. We spoke earlier about it. It's a lot more of a narrow focus. You get a lot more time with the players. Teaching is very wide. There's a lot of variety in terms of the day and how the day is structured. But yeah, it's been a change, but a change that's something that I've really looked forward to and excited about to see how it evolves.
Yeah, sorry. I'll ask you about your school's coaching a little bit, but tell us a bit about some of the players you're helping at the minute. I mean, got some talented seamers on the books. Sorry, there's a bit of static I can hear in the background. I don't know if you can hear that.
No, I can't. No.
Might just be on my side then. So Kate Cross, Mahika Gore, a couple of those in particular. What's it like working with them?
It's crazy. Kate Cross obviously has played for England for over 10 years. So, I'm working with people who have played for England for a long period of time. And somebody like Kate just knows her game inside out. So basically with somebody like her, it's just checking in to make sure that, the action's fluid, smooth, feel set. She knows her game. She knows what she's trying to do with the ball, and she's got an unbelievable amount of craft and skill that she's developed over the years playing for Lancashire and for England, and playing in all the franchise stuff around the world. So that's a different style of coaching, perhaps, to somebody who's newish to sort of developing the game. Something like Mahika, who I think she's about the same height as me. She's 6'4". She's got pace. She's a left armer. Different angle. However, Mahika's a little bit different because she's contracted to the England ECB. So I haven't seen as much as her, but hopefully I will do over the summer. And hopefully be able to facilitate as much as I can with the England coaches. So there's a lot of working together with the England coaches to make sure that we're on the same page. With something like Mahika, there's a girl called Grace Potts who's been around the England setup. Again, it's working with the coaches there to make sure that we're all aligned, we're all on the same page, and we're all moving, that individual in the right direction to get the best out of them. So, and then we've got people coming back from injuries. There's a girl called Grace Johnson, who's a real exciting prospect. So she's just coming back from a little niggle. So there's more chance to have input and work with those individuals. And people like Tara Norris, a left-arm seamer who's been at the club for a period of time, who's played franchise cricket in the 100. It's a real different day. I also, which is really good, I get to work and see the academy players to see what's coming through the sort of the ranks there in preparation to turning into, you know, professional cricketers. So, you know, there's players that have all the skills, and it's just sort of supporting and guiding and helping, where there's players, you know, who are young first year professionals who need that little bit more more support. So it's just finding that right level for each individual.
And how do you find are they receptive, you know, to your coaching? I guess it must be difficult when, you know, someone new comes in and probably don't know you to begin with.
Yeah, and that's really important. I think, you know, I'm not going to come in and coach Kate Cross and tell her what to do. I think, you know, she's done that for 15 years. I think it's just basically building a rapport, building a relationship with each individual, and then, you know, I think it is generally with the better players, or the players who've played for a long time. It's that is player led a little bit. You know, like tomorrow they've got a bowling session. I will always ask them. You know, I was planning it before this to say, you know, what do you want from the session, and then I'm there to then support that, because, you know, they're trying to find their formula, they're trying to find their specific week in preparation for Saturday's game. So, you know, what intensity they're bowling at practice, you know, it's all about feel and touch, and you know, and it's important that I get to understand how their week looks. So, for example, you know, something like Potsy, she bowled yesterday, she's a day off today, she'll bowl on Thursday, and we get so much data on the each individual in terms of their GPS, how fast they're running in, how much load they're putting through their body, and it's just making sure that within that week we're getting them prepared the best they can be for Saturday's fixture, which we're playing against Hampshire at home on Saturday at Old Trafford. So yeah, there's so much information, but it's making sure that you've got a relationship with the individual that you can help support anytime, and then maybe say, look, what about this? What you know, what do you recognise about this? What do you feel that I could help and support? So there's different ways with each individual, but generally at this level, it's player led at the moment for me, because I haven't had the winter, I haven't had that technical input to their actions, and sometimes you don't need, you know, sometimes you don't need the technical aspects. It's just that sort of mental side, or the tactical side, that you can help with more input, that side, rather than the technical side.
Yeah, and what's it been like working with Chris Reed? You know, a complete Notts legend.
Yeah, he's just consistency personified. He's so level-headed, which you need in a coach. You know, there can be so many emotions when you're winning and losing, and you know, whether we win or lose, he's just got that consistency, emotional sort of intelligence, just to be calm, and I think that's a calming effect on the players and also the coaches as well. But you know, he will be honest. I think, you know, that's one of the words that we use quite a lot in cricket. You know, just making sure that we're honest with each, you know, with the coaches and with the players. You know, if we didn't get the runs, or we didn't get the wickets, or we didn't bowl in certain areas, or you know, we played a poor shot, you know, he will let people know, but in a calm and in a calm manner.
No, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you worked obviously with the Blues there. Tell us a little bit about some of the bowlers you worked with there, and you know, just a lot of talent there among the squad, isn't there?
At Blaze.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, during my time teaching, I did a couple of years in the 100, and I really enjoyed that. Like, really enjoyed the aspect. To be fair, if I just move that back a little bit, I actually coached. Probably the person who got me into the women's game was a woman called Tash Farrant. Unfortunately, had to retire this year because of back injury, but Tash fell on Trent College about just before COVID, 2 years before COVID, and asked me, when there was no regional system, when there was no professional contracts outside of England, and she lost her England contract, and she asked me to help coach her, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to. That sounds a really good idea. And I've never really been involved in the women's game or coached a female cricketer, and what I felt, or what I found, was her attitude and behaviours were incredible. Her willingness to learn and improve and just trying to be a better cricketer, it flabbergasted me. And I think I probably gave her the confidence or that self-belief, and she did the same with me, with my coaching, to the stage where I thought, actually, I could take this a little bit further. And that's how I got involved with the Trent Rockets. And then after that, I got involved with Blaze. I felt, I really enjoyed working with Tash, and she, said the women's game is going places, it's becoming professional, the regionals, and obviously now it's gone into counties. And I got involved with Blaze at the academy level, and I really, really enjoyed it. Occasionally, when Guesty was there, when he was away with the England U19s, I would get involved with some of the pros. From Ballinger to Cassie, and some of those cricketers, I was like, wow, it was just really good to get that chances, but also to work with the academy to try and develop them. Liv Baker, who's now turned professional, Amy Wheeler, who's now a professional. I worked with her in the academy. There's 3 or 4 now in the academy that has, hopefully Isla Williamson are now developing, and hopefully will become professional cricketers, because it's now a pathway for girls, to earn money from the game, which is incredible. It's Lancashire, I think, have 16, 17 professional female cricketers. Blaze are probably about the same as well. And it's not only the opportunity they get from playing at that level, it's the franchise, the 100, girls are going for over £100,000. That's life, it can be like a life-changing amount. If you're playing that franchise cricket for 2-3 years, or you're going abroad in the Big Bash and IPL, the women's IPL, it's life-changing for some of these female cricketers, to earn a good wage.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned Grace and Cassie there. I mean, they're 2 standout players. I mean, how highly do you rate both of those?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, obviously Cassie's been injured a little bit at the start of this year, but I remember coaching her and thinking, wow, she can bowl quick, strong, works hard, great attitude, swings the ball into the right-hander. And it's one of those deliveries where nobody wants to face, because it's a bowler that's always at you. It's a bit like a left-arm seamer who swings the ball in. It's always at you, always zoning in the pads, every form of dismissal, inside, outside edge, LBW, bowled. And Cassie's got pace. Real pace, and Grace has got the craft. She can swing it. She's got good slow balls. We saw that when Lancs played against Blaze early in the month, and really good control, comes around the wicket, can bowl both sides. They're really highly skilled professional sports people, and particularly those two. And even there's a lot more. There's Jones, who's the other girl, Charlie, as well. We played him against him a second team game recently, and it's Amy Jones, isn't it? She bowled. She bowls quick. Yeah, she bowls a heavy ball. She's tall girl, strong, hits the deck hard, and the game's only going to get better and better, and it is, and it's going at a real rate. I think, speaking to Fletch, who works with Blaze, and he also worked at Trent, which I worked at for quite a few years, and he's into getting the girls bowling bouncers, and that was evident during the game that we played, that even Catherine Bryce was bowling bouncers, and she's not the quickest of the bowlers. But yeah, it was interesting to see Fletcher's influence on the seamers to bowl bouncers, which is something that the women haven't seen a lot of. Not being around and above shoulder height, and it's something that the batters are going to have to adapt to. And the stronger and faster they get, it's going to become more and more within the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Catherine Bright, I'll give her not also played Lancashire. I thought Grace was terrific and Charlie terrific over some spells, and Catherine Bryce as well was incredibly accurate. But is there a name there, maybe someone sort of coming through the ranks to keep an eye out for?
What at Lancashire? I
was thinking more the Blaze, I suppose.
There is. There's a girl called Isla Williamson, who I'd worked with quite a bit during the sort of last 2 years. She's tall. She plays at Leicestershire. She's one of those players who has a real good cricketing brain, like can work out the game. Talking tactics. And can work out, what's the best for her as an individual. And yeah, she's got good pace. She can swing it both ways. She's got good skills. And yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't want to put her on a pedestal, but yeah, there's lots of cricketers, but she's probably one that that I feel that's got a really good chance.
Oh, brilliant. We'll keep an eye out for her then.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, obviously, there'll be a lot of interest among people listening to this about your time at schools in Nottingham. You were at the high school and Trent College. I want to ask you about some of the people that you coached. And I know a lot of the current Notts players you had at Trent, Freddie McCann, Sam Citron among those. Can you talk to us a bit about what they were like and how highly you rate some of those players?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say at school we facilitate, the people like Freddie McCann who came for sixth form. I wouldn't say I was the one that made Freddie McCann. Absolutely not. Freddie just came to Trent and we did everything, the school did everything we could possibly to get him to be a professional cricketer. And Freddie was and is an outstanding cricketer. Great cricket brain, determined, hits the ball harder than anybody I've seen. And we did everything we could in terms of fitness, mental side, anything we could do to help on his journey towards being a professional cricketer. And as soon as he arrived, you could see his behaviours were definitely heading towards it. He was a humble, grounded individual that just was a great person to be around, and was, very influential on everybody around the changing room in terms of his behaviours. So he was an incredible one. Byron was the same. Byron was at school with his younger brother Dalton. Again, you could just see that his attitudes, his behaviours, he just wanted to be a professional cricketer, and he worked so hard. You can have all that talent in the world, but it's when that switch flips that you working hard towards being, that the end goal of being a professional cricketer. It's really good to see. And then we've had people like Fateh Singh, who had the whole journey from year 7 all the way to year 13. And all these individuals, I'd like to say, are really good people. And that's the first and foremost. Not letting cricket define you. Be a good person, and whether that's the environment of Trent, I don't know. I would like to say it is, and what they experienced at Trent, and hopefully I influenced, on their attitudes. And Fateh was brilliant. And we had Mitchell Wagstaff, we had Sarah Glenn. I'm trying to think, Sam Citron for 3 years. So we've had a lot of cricketers, and there are a lot of cricketers below now at Trent that are coming through who have still got an opportunity. One is my lad. There's a lad called Max Hunt, Dipesh Sapkota. There's loads coming through. Mox McCarthy, Teddy Lum, Michael Lum's lad. Every year group there seems to be now at Trent a potential player who can be turned into a professional cricketer, which for me is exciting, but also very, very, very much rewarding to see the future of it. And obviously not being involved in it anymore, but I can see it from the outside because I've still got two boys there. My eldest finishes this year, and I've got my youngest in year 11. But yeah, really exciting. There was another one I've forgotten to mention. I'm trying to think who it is, but it'll come to me.
No, that's fine. It's interesting you talk about that pathway, because I know Somerset are very good at using the private schools and getting players through that way. It sounds like not maybe something they can kind of do as well going forward potentially.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast of it. I think it was it Nasser and Atherton saying about Somerset, and they seem to have got a really good formula producing homegrown cricketers, and it's and having success. The Roux brothers as an example, but yeah, look. One good thing is, and one important thing is, hopefully it's just not just private schools. We want English cricket to be at the best, and the biggest outcome is beating Australia, isn't it? I think that's the biggest thing in the Ashes, beating Australia, and we need depth. We need all schools playing the sport, or as many boys and girls playing at clubs and enjoying their cricket. And hopefully if you get that foundation bigger at the bottom, we've hopefully got a better chance of making or developing the next Ben Stokes. But yeah, I think private schools do help. Obviously the stats show that a lot of boys presently that play for England have been involved in a private school, whether that's a finishing, for two terms, or whether that's, something like Fateh Singh, who was there from the age of 11 all the way up to sixth form. But hopefully, I see them as long as they're facilitating, it's not about the school. And I think Trent was really good at that. Freddie McCann, when he came to school, we said, "What do you want to do?" And I want to be a professional cricketer. Well, then, if it was more important for him to play for Notts than it was to play for school in a national cup, that was our sort of decision for him to play. I think he played a second team game against Yorkshire, where he caught Bairstow out and got booed off the field. And he was supposed to play for school against Repton. It was more important that he had that as his development than playing against Repton School in a national cup game. That's the way I sort of looked at it. And yeah, but some schools perhaps don't probably see it as that the same way, but hopefully they do.
Yeah, and I'm a huge admirer of Freddie. I think he's complementary to go all the way, and I've not seen many better slip fielders either, to be honest.
Oh wow, he just had bucket hands. He never dropped a catch. And you know what? Some of his skills I know he feels at slip, but some of his skills on the outer ring, some of the catches he took were incredible. Literally incredible. He, the ones where they catch over the boundary, flip it up, and then run back in and catch it inside the boundary. Some of the times he made that look so easy, and that's a really high skill to perform under pressure. He just made it like it was having fun in his back garden, and yeah, I think that's from his family, just making him just really grounded individual, and yeah, I was with Freddie as well. You always found what I really like. It's a bit like Chris Reed. Like if he got 100 and he came out after batting, or he got 0, you would never know the difference. You'd sit next to you, when somebody scored 100, you're absolutely buzzing. You can see in their face. Whereas Freddie would just come and sit down and just talk to the other batters. This bowler's doing this, that bowler's doing that. You never saw any sort of change in his emotions, which is really, really important as a batter, because you know what it's like as a batter. You could be out, you can be in the form of your life, and then you can have two really good balls, and then your form's completely disappeared, and you're striving and you're searching, and it's an emotional roller coaster as a batter. But you just need to be level-headed, and Freddie had an abundance of that calmness and groundedness.
Yeah, you can see that when he plays for Notts, absolutely.
Yeah.
And obviously before Trent, you were at Nottingham High School. Tell us a bit about some of the lads you coached there that you remember the most.
Yeah, we we had a little chat about that earlier, and there was obviously the Anuj Dal was incredible. I mean, he's just such an amazing human being, and always has time. He still calls me, which is funny. He still calls me Mr. Boswell every time I see him. Even when we play, I saw him a couple of days ago at Lancs, well, about 3 weeks ago, and he still calls me Mr. Boswell. I think he's once called me Mr. B, and then he changed it to Mr. Boswell. But what a cricketer! He was great attitude, incredibly professional, and what a move from Notts to Derbyshire, and he's played probably 10 years professional cricket. Very clever boy as well. So when cricket finishes, he's going to transition into a great career. So yeah, he was a delight to be around, and still to see him still playing at Derbyshire is fantastic. The other one I absolutely loved watching play, and there was two brothers. One was a very how would I describe it? He was a nudger, a nerdler, a grafter. With Sam Story, and I just remember always seeing very vivid memories of him, just absolutely caked, his trousers muddy, his top dirty, and he would just be diving around, stopping singles, balls hitting him. And I can visualize him now batting against whoever and just nerdling it around. He was so hard, and he valued his wicket so much. And I used to say to him, value scoring a single, and he was great. But on the flip side of it, his brother Ben was completely the opposite, very flamboyant. And he scored 100 against Worksop College, and I can remember him hitting a six straight over the bowler's head. It would have been Brett Hutton, and he hit him straight over his head for six, and he scored 100. We ended up tying the game. It was an incredible game, and it was at a stage where our cricket was okay, but Worksop was stronger. And I remember it was a change in our mindset that they'd celebrated a tie, and we were devastated that we'd actually tied against Worksop. So I just remember that moment thinking, actually, yeah, our cricket's turning here. And then on my last ever game, on my last year at high school, we played Trent, and the boys knew that I was moving from high school to Trent, and we played them at Trent, and I knew where they warmed up, so I made sure that we warmed up where they warmed up. Everything I did to wind up Trent, this guy called David Hart there, he knew, and we did, and we ended up winning off the last ball. And it was a guy called Alex McDonald, I remember, number 11 batter, always rated himself as a batter, bowled a bit of off spin, and he hit the winning four. We were 9 wickets down, and we beat Trent at Trent 9 down, and it was an incredible game. It was an incredible game, and it was a team not full of any superstars, but we just worked really, really hard. Every boy played. It was great. It was an amazing day. And then I left. Unfortunately, I left high school and then went to Trent.
Oh, I mean, I know a lot of people who listen to this, would have been coached by you, so they'll love some of these stories. And I know Alex McDonald, so I'm sure, and the story. So I'm sure they'll be thrilled. And obviously, how does it compare coaching to playing? Do you enjoy it more?
Coaching, yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think about that a lot. And when I went to Lancashire, I had to present about me, which is find quite hard. I had to do like a 5-minute presentation, really maybe do it in front of the whole group. It's probably the most nervous I've ever been. Done assemblies in front of the whole school, and then having to present in front of all the staff and all the females. And one of the questions, what's your driver for coaching? And I said about my Lord's final experience. I said, I wanted to know why that happened to me as a professional cricketer, where I had an interesting game at the final, and that has been, and I put that picture up of me with the umpire in the background with my arms out wide, and that has been my absolute driver in terms of coaching. I love playing, I love the game, it's in my blood, but you know, in terms of going from playing, which, you know, I got the yips, I couldn't bowl, etc. afterwards, that I needed to find something that was rewarding, and that took a long time. But coaching was something I sort of fell into, but then because I wanted to know the why did that happen to me? Why technically was my action not good enough? What was mentally not strong enough about me to play in a Lord's final, to give me the tools to be able to deal with pressure situations? And that has, you know, that coaching, that playing experience has driven my coaching experience to find out sort of the why and how I can help support other people within the game to, you know, to be better cricketers, whether it's at the development stage or, you know, at the moment at the professional level.
That's really interesting. I wasn't obviously going to touch upon sort of your playing career in detail. It's been well documented, but
Yeah.
now that you mentioned that, it's actually kind of been a driver now. I found that really interesting, and that sort of journey you've been on now and how that helps. That must be great insight to give to some of the bowlers who, you know, that maybe other, you know, former players can't offer.
Yeah, you know, I can empathize, you know, I can understand, and I think you need a bit of empathy in both the men's and the women's game. But if you can understand, you know, we're not always going to have a perfect day with bowling. You know, there's probably one time out of 10 where your body is not hurting. You find a little bit of rhythm, probably less actually. It's probably 1 in 100, where, you know, you can run in and you can put the ball where you want to. You don't feel any pain. The wind's coming over your shoulder. It's slightly downhill. The wicket's doing a little bit. That very rarely happens. You know, there's days where, you know, you're trying to force it, you try to muscle it, you run in too fast, you run in too slow. And I think, you know, I've got a lot of empathy as an individual, and I get that, and I understand that every day is, as a bowler, you know, you can sometimes feel like your body feels alien, and you can't find any rhythm. And that's one thing I think I do have a lot of, and it's important to understand, you know, that they are professionals. However, you know, they are human beings as well who have feelings, have emotions. You know, there's lots of things going on, you know, just outside of the cricket field, you know, that you get to know the individual to try and help them and support them to get them in the right mindset that they're ready to play on that Saturday in front of a crowd, and deliver the goods. Because, you know, that's, you know, down, you know, the end of it, they're paid to do that. That's their job.
Absolutely. And just a couple of final questions. Firstly, you know, what are your hopes for the season for Lancashire, and how do you see the players getting on as well? They're two very strong sides.
Yeah. Look, Lancs, obviously last year they won 2 competitions. We haven't started as well as we'd like to have. We won the first game convincingly. Unfortunately, our overseas got injured. Gabby Lewis, she scored 100, an unbelievable 100, the Irish overseas, Irish international. And obviously, an overseas does help, and she had a quad strain. Unfortunately, she's had to go back. So at the moment, we haven't quite signed anybody yet, but we're looking for an overseas, which is really important. You can see that, and you know, we played Yorkshire on Saturday, and their pro got 100. Yeah, and 4 wickets. It makes a huge difference. So look, Blaze, second game we played Blaze, and you know, it could have gone either way. The weather didn't help us, losing the toss, etc. And bowling second, it could have gone either way. That. What was the third one? Yorkshire was obviously disappointed. Somerset and then Yorkshire. So we've lost 3 on the bounce. So Saturday is a very big game for the club in terms of bouncing back and getting a W, getting a performance. So look, it's I think it's going to be tough, but hopefully we'll do it with all the preparation that we've had this week and last week, and we'll have to wait and see. But I think knowing Chris Reed and the way he goes about it, you know, he's very much wants to win, as we all do, I think for the success of the size of the club, I think it's really important that there is some trophies at the end of the season. But we'll wait and see.
Absolutely, and it's your former club Leicestershire playing Notts this week. Do you still sort of follow, the championship in detail, and how?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I followed it until very in much detail till I knew everybody. Until when Darren Stevens retired, when I know he was about 45, I lost a little bit of interest because I didn't know the players specifically. I look at the teams and I don't know many players within the sides, and it sort of becomes a bit different. But I do have since being at Trent, and there's Freddie, and I see Fate. Hope he's in the Worcester team, and Mitch Wagstaff's been scored.
Scott's just disappeared there. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get him back shortly. It's been really interesting to hear what he's had to say about a number of different topics. So obviously his coaching journey, and after his playing days, and being with the Blaze and Lancashire. We'll give him another minute, see if he can get him back. But if not, I think we might be in luck. Is he? Well, what we'll probably do then, we'll probably leave it there for now. Thank you to everyone who's listened or listening to this today. It's been a really good, really interesting discussion with Scott. So, and that was actually my final question anyway. So, but I'll have to ask him about Darren Stevens another time. But thank you to everyone who's listened today. Do check our interview with Paul Johnson, which was earlier this week. We've got loads of content on the Substack as well, so check all of that out, and we'll be back sort of after each day of the Leicestershire game.
Ooh. Can you hear me?
Yes, I was just sort of saying that was the last question anyway, so I was just kind of summarising to everyone listening to say sort of thank you for your insights, but we'll leave it there for now. Thank you to everyone who's listened, and we'll be back soon.